AI is everywhere these days. And since the release of ChatGPT, I've already made it program a simple game of Pong, and I've used it to automate producing a video for me. But now let's try to, instead of using this as a fun little tech demo, actually make something with it. This is the basic idea for this video. Everything in this game will be AI generated. The concepts, the code, the assets, everything. The only thing I will be doing is hooking them all up together and maybe solving a compiling issue here or there when they pop up. And of course removing the background from the generated images when needed, because Stable Diffusion doesn't generate an alpha channel. Let's get into it and ask ChatGPT for a list of game IDs. 10 IDs I get to pick from. A platformer, which is always a nice option. A farming simulator, which sounds like fun, but might be a little too complex for this experiment, so that could be a follow-up video. I think we'll go with the side-scrolling shooter for this one though. So for that, we need a player that can shoot, enemies, a boss fight at the end, upgrades for the player, and maybe something like a score system. And it's giving us a to-do list. I guess I can refer to that during development, but I mostly plan to do things in my own order. So let's have it start us off by making a player script, which seems to work fine. The only error I get is the lack of a power-up component existing, but of course that's what we're going to be making up next. This is how I expect a lot of this process to work, creating a script, seeing what dependencies it's come up with, and based on that creating the next script until everything works together. Amazingly, when I ask it to create a power-up script, it has the full context of what that means and which bits of data that should contain. It's 100% consistent between this and the player script I just created as far as power-up types go. This might sound like something very obvious, and to a certain extent it is, but it's something that chatbots, up until now at least, have had real issues with. But it's not perfect, because it's created a second bit of collision code where it tries to apply the power-up to the player from the power-up's perspective, while the player itself already has code running for that. But we can easily remove that from the player object and just deal with that on the power-up. And well, we can now move and spawn bullets. I had to add a rigid body on my own, but that's all, it just worked. So let's get working on actually making those bullets. I just realized, much like the bullets need to move upwards when they're spawned, the power-ups will need to move downwards after they spawn, creating the illusion of movement. And even though it wasn't the most recent script it had worked on, it picked up where it left off and gave me exactly what I wanted. And while we're at it, let's make also a power-up spawner. Once again here, it works great, but let's push it a little and see if it can make us a script that randomly assigns a type to a power-up when it spawns, and then adds a different sprite based on that. And finally, we have an error. Let's see if ChatGPT can actually fix this error for us, or if I'm still needed for something more than just copy-pasting code. The way things are going now is a little messy though. It has an array of types to go with the sprites on the power-up script, but that's only ever used to decide which sprites to use, where you'd probably want to use that also as the actual type. But since the challenge is that I can't change the code, we'll have to deal with this. Even though it's a little bit clunky, it works. I have to add a player tag to my player object, otherwise the pickups will entirely ignore me. But other than that, so far all I've done is fill in some fields and copy and paste some code. So time to make the enemy script. By default it makes an enemy that just flies by, but I'd prefer a more Space Invader style, where they stick to the top of the screen and give them the ability to shoot at me. After a little bit of back and forth, I got it to write the script that I needed. Now I just need an enemy spawner and of course make the bullets deal some damage. And that's the main gameplay of this game, more or less done. Of course we need to add UI elements, preferably a boss fight, and an absolute load of graphic improvements. But we're well on our way to having a real game here. I think you get the point now. I spent a little bit more time refining what I wanted for the code by asking for increasingly more and more specific requests from the chatbot. And after a while, I had a game. Now, adding a level manager to slowly increase the spawn rate and in the end spawn a boss, which for now is just a bigger, faster shooting single enemy, and we're on to generating the graphics. Of course, adding things like sounds and music and animations, designing the UI and all that kind of stuff is very much still a manual task. Which is why it looks so damn basic, because that's not what this video is about. With the added graphics and some quickly slapped together sound design, this is the final result. Everything you're seeing right now comes out of an AI. Isn't that crazy? Okay, in all fairness, I did add some particle systems to spice things up, but those are really basic and took me all of like 5 minutes to make. So, can this go up on Steam? I mean, literally speaking, yes, but should it? No, absolutely not. But the fact that I made this in an evening is kind of amazing, and that's what this is really useful for. Getting you, as a developer, set up with the basic building blocks to make your game with. Because it's not like it doesn't work, it's just severely lacking in polish. The small, more artistic detail that, at least for now, we can't automate yet. But with this kind of tech becoming more and more commonplace, who is to say that by next year we won't have a plugin that does this for your particle systems? Just type in what you want and it will give you a particle system with all the right settings, or a tool where you can describe a sound that you want and it will generate it for you. In all fairness though, audio is a bit of a difficulty, but the future is now, so who knows? If you want to play this game for yourself, there will be a link down below in the description to an itch.io page. And if you want to dig around in the project file itself and see just how much of a mess the AI made of this code, or rather, how surprisingly great it is, you can also find the full project file on my Patreon down below in the description, just as I do with all of my tutorials. For now though, I'm gonna play this some more because it's surprisingly fun.